And I am glad to introduce our speaker for today, Ma'am Dianne Joy Aguilon. Ma'am Dianne is an assistant professor at the Department of Forest Biological Sciences, College of Forestry and Natural Resources here at UPLB. Since 2012, she teaches forest entomology, forest protection, forest biodiversity, and forest canopy science. She finished her BS degree in agriculture, major in entomology, and MS in entomology, both from UP Los Baños. She just recently obtained her PhD and in environmental science, specializing in conservation ecology at the University of Szeged in southern Hungary last December 2021. She was awarded the Stipendum Hungaricum scholarship for her PhD study in Hungary. She is a licensed agriculturist, but she considers herself more of a practicing entomologist by profession and by passion. Her research interests include um, insect conservation science and taxonomy and ecology, insect life history, biodiversity conservation, karst ecology, and forest protection. Outside of work, she also enjoys cooking, trying new food, traveling, and hiking. And aside from insects, she is also interested in ground orchids, carnivorous plants, rafflesia, and other unique plants. Everyone, let's all welcome Ma'am Dianne Aguilon. Ma'am Dianne?
Okay. So I'm Dianne. So I want to thank Museum of Natural History for inviting me, to share with you about my work on ant and plant assemblages in Karst dolines. Okay. So this is this is actually my PhD work, from Hungary. So as Sir Flor mentioned or had the introduction, so I just finished my PhD study last December. So I will be very happy to share with you, my PhD work. So let's see them in the next few slides. So my PhD study is part of a big research work, actually, by Dr. Zoltan Bathory. The PhD work, the research project actually is part of the geodiversity and species preservation, the capacity of Karst Doline as microrefugia. So all the studies that I'll be discussing is part of this big research project, which is funded by the Hungarian National Research Development and Innovation Office. Okay. So for today, I will be discussing about Karst. Okay, and in Hungary mostly, of course, because I did my my field work in Hungary. So I will be also focusing more on my research questions, what are our hypotheses, what we did in the field, of course, and our results. Okay. So first, let me introduce you to Karst. Okay, I know most of you are familiar with Karst because as far as I know, we have lots of Karst also in the Philippines. I know if you are familiar with the Karst ecosystem in Palawan, wherein we have a lot of forest over limestone. Okay, but what I did in my PhD is that I studied this unique Karst features, the enclosed depression. But before I talk about more about my study, let us have some brief or some definition of terms about Karst. Okay, so Karst landscapes were formed due to dissolution of carbonate rocks. What are these carbonate rocks made up of? So this can be limestone, dolomite, gypsum, which were influenced highly by climatic and complex hydrologic processes. Okay, and Karst landscapes comprise of 20% of Earth's terrestrial surface. Okay, so ganun sila ka-importante. Okay, and in Hungary, since I did my PhD work in Hungary, Karst landscapes are important for Hungarian people because it comprised 1.45% of their total area. Okay, and there are different kinds of karst features. Okay, so some of it, just to name a few, are we call enclosed depressions, can be also termed as dolines or sinkhole. Okay, caves, of course, we are all familiar with these caves. We like to go inside caves. Okay, there's also sinking streams as well as limestone pavement. But no, in this talk, I will be focusing more about enclosed depression, no, about dolines, which actually part, no, which I studied, no, during my PhD in Hungary. Okay. So now let us discuss specifically what is a karst, no, karst dolines. Okay. So kung mapapansin niyo dun sa title ko, I talked about the ants and plant assemblages in karst dolines. So what are these karst dolines, by the way? Okay. So when we say karst dolines, these are simply enclosed depressions, no? So these enclosed depressions, no, can be small to large size. Okay. And there are different terminologies around the world, no, when it comes to these enclosed depressions. So in Europe, actually, these enclosed depressions were called dolines. No? But in North America, no, I think also in the Philippines, we are more familiar with sinkhole. Okay. And in Mexico, they call these enclosed depressions as cenote. Okay, it's a Spanish term, no, in Mexico, means sinkhole or doline. No, they call their enclosed depressions as cenote. Now, while in China, no, they call these enclosed depressions as tianke. Okay, so the term doline, no, as they typically call in Europe, no, it was derived from the word dolina. No, in Hungary, when you say doline, no, there's this local term, Hungarian term called tubo. Okay. So in Hungary, this is the typical, not only in Hungary, I think, this is the typical karst land form, no, with highly unique microclimate. Okay, as you can see here in my illustration, there are different types of dolines, but it depends, no, on literature. But for this, I followed, no, the three doline types, no. So mostly in our study, or I think in Hungary, most dolines are solution dolines. So ano ba itong mga solution dolines na to? Okay, so these solution dolines were formed when water funnels into a fissure in the limestone, causing the surrounding rock to be gradually lowered, resulting in depression. So sabi ko nga kanina, these karst landscapes were formed based on complex, no, climatic and hydrologic processes. At isa sa mga unique and highly important karst landscape are these dolines or depressions, no, karstic depressions as they also call. Okay, I hope you can follow. So I will be more of later on discussing, no, what are the ants and plant assemblages which can be found in these karst dolines, and how, no, this habitat heterogeneity and disturbance affect their assemblages, okay, or their distribution specifically. Okay, so okay, so these are just some of my photos, no, during our field work in Bükk Mountains in northern Hungary of our study area. No, so these are solution dolines. As I've mentioned, there are different kinds of dolines. It can range from small to large. So sasabihin ko, mamaya, gaano ba kaliit, gaano ba kalaki, gaano ba kalalim? Okay, so we conducted all our studies in these solution dolines. Okay, these pictures were taken from, no, Bükk Mountains in northern Hungary, which is one of our study sites. Okay. So furthermore, no, bakit ba pinag-aaralan itong mga karst na to? Okay? So karst are known worldwide as areas of great biological importance. Okay? They provide valuable ecosystem services, no? Clean water, unique habitat, rich biodiversity, to name a few. Okay? Aside from that, more importantly, I think that's why actually this is one of our goals in this research project, is to investigate, no, the role of doline as microrefugia. Okay, so when you say microrefugia, these are small areas that provide suitable package of relatively stable microclimate. What are the importance of this microrefugia? Why this karst landscape are considered as microrefugia? Okay, because they serve as environmental buffers against the effect of climate change to organism. Okay, and in fact, in Hungary, in Bükk Mountains, which is one of the highly protected area in Hungary, actually is home to one of the unique species of relic plants, the Dracocephalum royciana. As you can see here in the picture, I hope you can see. Okay, you can see my picture here. Yeah, so that's why it's considered these cars in Hungary are highly valued, because they were already proven to serve as climatic microrefugia for relic species. When you say relic species, these are species na noon nag-occur pa sa ice age, pero it turned out they still occurring and thriving in this unique karst area. They thought all of these species already were extinct during the ice age, but then at present they were found in this karst landscape, particularly in karstic dolines in Hungary. They identified this relic plant species as the Dracocephalum royciana. Okay, so in addition to that, as microrefugia, the karst also nowadays, even given their importance, it's just sad that these karst are now prone to endangerment. So hindi lang pala mga species ang na-endanger, even this landscape, even especially these important habitats for different organisms. Okay, why they became highly sensitive? Why they are prone to endangerment? Primarily because of human-induced disturbances, or because of various human activities. Okay, agricultural activities, urbanization, and other human impacts. Okay, therefore, just important for them to be protected. Not only the organisms in these karst, but of course, as I've mentioned, the important habitat which can be found in this karst landscape or karst ecosystem. Okay, so now let's proceed with my actual study. Okay, so what are the three premises that we had in my PhD work? So first, one of the background is that heterogeneous habitats in karst dolines cater or harbor unique or rich biodiversity. Okay, so various studies had been done and prove that these dolines actually cater huge or a rich biodiversity. Why? What made this doline unique in this kind of attribute? Having heterogeneous habitats, as well as it harbors, as I've said, unique or so rich biodiversity, because it has this what we call island-like habitats, and as well as microclimatic inversion. Okay, this microclimatic inversion, it means in the bottom of the dolines, it's cooler compared to the surrounding area. So I will discuss what are the different aspects and parts of the doline. Bakit sinasabing it has this unique microclimatic inversion? So, but to give you just a brief background about this microclimatic inversion in these karstic dolines is that, for example, in this bottom depression, it's basically cooler compared to this surrounding area. Okay, thus it can be a local biodiversity hotspot wherein it protects a unique flora and fauna, actually, for example, in these bottoms. Or you can find different species of plants for even in a small area. Okay, that's why they considered it as one of the local biodiversity hotspot, because plant species, for example, found in these bottoms cannot be found in the surrounding area. Ganun ka-interesting itong mga dolines na to. Okay? And also to add to this uniqueness in terms of dolines, in terms of their heterogeneity, in terms of their habitat, they harbor endemic, montane, and relic species. Okay, so a lot of studies have been done pertaining to the habitat heterogeneity in Doline, and they found out that there are plants, unique plants, animal species like soil arthropods, thriving in this Doline. But there are limited studies on other insects like ants. So this study is a pioneer study, So this is like some of the few studies conducted on ants in karstic dolines in Hungary. Okay, so why we use ants and plants in this study? Okay, because ants and plants are important and good biological indicators of habitat quality, and also they share, they highly share similar strategies. Okay, and lastly, so as I mentioned in my previous slide, that nowadays these karst dolines are prone to degradation because of various disturbances. One of which is the human-induced disturbances, which is part of this PhD work. Okay. So specifically, what are my research questions? Okay. So there are 3 studies in this PhD work. So for the first study, we want to know how microhabitats in dolines determine species distribution patterns of ants and plant assemblages. Secondly, the second part of this study wants to know how microhabitat heterogeneity and vegetation structure in dolines influence the occurrence of specific functional groups and traits of ant assemblages. And lastly, the third study aims to know or how the different types of anthropogenic disturbances or human-induced disturbances affect the naturalness of this doline vegetation. Okay, so that comprise actually this is the whole dissertation framework. So my study is comprised, the PhD work is comprised of 3 big studies. Okay. Okay. So we have 3 as well hypotheses. Okay, for the first study, so we hypothesized that the different microhabitats in dolines influence and plant distribution patterns. Okay, so when you say microhabitats, so I kind of briefly already introduced that dolines have different small habitats having unique microclimate. So I will discuss later on actually what are these. I will discuss here what are the different microhabitats in doline. So for the sake of this study, we categorize these microhabitats as microhabitats depending on aspect or slopes. So we have the north-facing slopes as one of the important microhabitat. We have also the bottom of the dolines. We have also south-facing slopes, and also we have the plateau. So when I say north-facing slopes, these are the area in the doline wherein it is not, hindi masyado siyang nasisikatan ng araw. Of course, when you say bottom, it's the bottom of the depression. And then in the south-facing slopes, ito naman yung part ng doline or aspect ng doline na kung saan ito yung area na nasisikatan ng araw. So we assumed that in this specific microhabitats, also it contains species adapted to cool or moist condition, because these important habitats typically are cooler, north-facing slopes and bottoms are cooler compared to south-facing slopes. Kaya nga sabi ko, di ba, nasisikatan siya ng araw. So mostly it is warmer, and as well as the plateau, which has this intermediary temperature and relative humidity or moisture. Okay. For the second study, so we assume that the functional characteristics of ant assemblages increases depending on if there is high habitat heterogeneity in dolines, or it decreases when the doline is surrounded or have this Fagus sylvatica forest around it. So I will discuss that specifically later on when we go. I will discuss the second study of this PhD work. Okay. And lastly, so we assumed that human-induced disturbances negatively influence the naturalness of this Doline vegetation. Okay. So where did I conducted my study? No, saan pa sa Hungary? No, I don't know if you are familiar where is Hungary. No, so Hungary is in Central Europe. Okay, its neighboring countries are Austria, okay, Slovakia, Serbia. Okay, so our study were conducted in the northern part of Hungary as well as in the southern part of Hungary. So we did our study in Bükk Mountains here in the northern part. In another study we did in the Mecsek Mountains, in the southern part of Hungary. So Bükk Mountains have elevation from 700 to 800 meters above sea level, and typical habitat types which can be found in this region are semi-dry, mesic and wet grasslands, as well as, of course, European beech forest or the Pagos selvatica forest. And the climate is temperate with mountain climate influences. While the other study site or study area was in Mecsek Mountains in the southern Hungary, which has much lower elevation, and also having habitat types of beech, oak, hornbeam, or rabbit forest. And it has this sub-Mediterranean climate, so it's warmer, in this part of Hungary. Okay, so just want to emphasize, what are the different parts of the Doline that we used or we studied, So I mentioned kanina's hypothesis that Karst Dolines have this bottom aspect. So there is this also north-facing slope or yung part na hindi masyadong naaarawan. We have also this south-facing slope, which is yung naaarawan na part. Okay? And of course, we have the plateau. Okay? So yun. So later on, I will be discussing how we compared the different ants and plant assemblages in the different parts, or we consider this as the microhabitats in dolines. Okay? Okay. So in terms of sampling design, I already mentioned that we have 3 studies. During my PhD work, we conducted 3 studies. So for the first study, we have 4 Doline microhabitats. So we use 4 different microhabitats: the south-facing slope, the bottom of the Doline, the north-facing slope, and plateau. Okay. So we use 3 solution Dolines. We sampled 3 solution Dolines in Bükk Mountains. While for study 2, we compared the ants, functional trait in Doline and in plateau. While we use also 4 different Doline types, in the second study about ants and functional groups. So we studied different types of Dolines based on cover. So this is a grassland Doline. So there's no forest surrounding this, but purely it's a Doline. These are depressions, mostly are grasslands. While here in this type 2 Dolines, there is this view cover, okay, of this European forest. So there's some forest patch in here in this type 2 Dolines, while in this type 3, it is mostly surrounded by forest. Okay, while in this type 4, these are forested Dolines, or Dolines which are more of surrounded or are called forested Dolines. Okay, and then lastly, we have in the third study, we use 2 Doline types depending on disturbance. So we have the natural versus disturbed Dolines. Okay, hope you can follow. So for the sampling method, so since I studied ants and plants, so before we did the collection for ants, of course we measured the different microclimates in those 4 aspects or microhabitats in Dolines. So we use data loggers to measure the for 24 hours to measure the microclimate in those different aspects of Dolines. Since Bükk and Mecsek Mountains are protected areas, so we did only non-destructive sampling. So that's why we use baiting and hand collecting to sample ants. While for ants, we did transect method. Okay, so for study 2, for the ants, of course, we use the same method, the baiting and hand collecting methods. And for the third study, we use also transect methods. Okay, so this is an example of our bait, no, during our ant collection. Okay. So the ants and plants that we collected were grouped, no, on different functional groups. So for study 1, so we grouped those ant and plant depending on the category of Chehovsky for ants, no. Actually, he has a book about ants of Poland and other parts of Myrmecofauna of Europe. Borhidi, the categories, no, on functional groups of plants were based on Borhidi, which is about the different social behavior, no, of plants in Hungary. So for study 1, we categorized the ants and plants that we collected based on this grouping. Okay, warm adapted species, cold adapted species, intermediate temperature adapted species, and so on. No, while for our second study, we categorize, no, our the ants that we collected based on their different characteristics such as temperature preference, habitat plasticity, dispersal ability, which were based, no, on Chehovsky, of course, in Seifert. No, Seifert also did a book on ants in Europe. Okay, so this category was based on Seifert, no, on Seifert's grouping. Okay, and lastly, so we categorize the plants that we collected for the third study, of course, as well as based on Borhidi. Okay, so we categorize the plants that we collected based if they are specialists, they are competitor, or they are generalist. Okay. So we all data were analyzed using R, but specifically, no. So temperature and relative humidity data were averaged over 10-minute interval. We determined the diagnostic species of habitats. Okay, we did Permanova to test the effect of microhabitat on species composition. We also did use NMDS ordination to visualize, no, the differences in terms of composition, as well as we use the generalized linear mixed models to test the differences on functional groups of the different habitats or microhabitats in dolines. Okay. Okay, now let's proceed to the results of the first study. Okay, so I've mentioned we measured the microclimate in dolines, okay, for 24 hours. So based on our results, okay, the north-facing slopes and bottoms of the dolines consistently are cooler and moisture, okay, while the south-facing slopes are consistently warmer and drier compared to the plateau. So based on this figure, no, as you can see here, temperature is consistently higher, no, in the south-facing slope. As you can see here, the red one is the south-facing slope, no, during the day, while temperature is consistently, no, lower in the bottoms, no, at night. Okay, as you can see here. Okay, while in terms of relative humidity, of course, the south-facing slope has the lowest, no, relative humidity during the day, while the north-facing slope has the highest, no, relative humidity during the day. Okay. Yes. And in terms of species composition, this figure illustrates, no, the representative species of ants and plants collected during this first study. Okay. So we collected 14 ant species, no, in Bükk Mountains, while we have 145 plant species also in Bükk Mountains. So in the different microhabitats or different parts of the dolines, so represent mostly notable species found were Myrmica saboleti, no, which is warm adapted species. Also, we collected Myrmica ruginodis, no, as not only in north-facing slope but also in the bottom, no, which is a known full adapted species of ants. Same holds true with the species found in the north-facing slope when it comes to plants, no, as well as, of course, in the bottoms. Okay. So these are just some of the notable species we found, no, we recorded in the north-facing slopes and bottoms of the Dolines in Bükk Mountains, as well as in the south-facing slopes of the Dolines in Bükk Mountains. So Iris sibirica, Myrmica ruginodis, and other these species are known to be cold adapted species. Okay, so our results also showed that temperature and relative humidity in north-facing slope and bottoms are consistently higher, and harbor ants and plant species having same attributes. Okay, so what we found, in these north-facing slopes and bottoms of the Dolines were also cold adapted and high moisture adapted species of ants and plants. While in south-facing slope, we found ant and plant species adapted to warmer and drier conditions. Wherein here in this part of the Dolines, it was proven that these Dolines are, of course, consistently warmer as well as drier in terms of temperature and relative humidity. Okay. So in terms of differences in species composition, so the distribution pattern of the different functional groups of ants and plants mirror the variation in microclimate in the different Doline microhabitats. Okay, so specifically, the ants and plants assemblages found in south-facing slope were found to be associated with higher temperature and lower relative humidity. Okay, while the ants and plant assemblages found in the north-facing slopes and bottoms of the Dolines were known to be associated with lower temperature and higher moisture. Okay. While lastly, the ants and plant assemblages found in terms of species composition in the plateau were known to be associated with intermediate temperature and relative humidity. So based on this NMDS analysis, you can see here that the ants were found those ants were highly affected by temperature and as well as relative humidity. Okay, those most ants can be found in dry and high temperature adapted ants were known to be found here in the south facing slopes, while those ants adapted to high moisture and low temperature were found in these bottoms and north-facing slope of this Doline. Same holds true with the plant assemblages recorded for this study. Okay. There. In terms of functional groups, ant and plant functional groups showed significant preferences for certain microhabitat. Okay, as you can see here, okay, ants were found, ants who are adapted to dry conditions were found to be high, in the south-facing slopes. Same with plants. Okay, while those ants adapted to high moisture were found mostly in the south-facing slope, which is drier. Okay, as well as or for plants adapted to drier temperature were found in the south-facing slopes of these Dolines. Okay. So the different ant and plant functional groups showed significant preferences for certain microhabitats in Doline. So just to make clarification, the different microhabitats I'm talking about are the south-facing slopes, bottom, north-facing slopes, and the plateau. So these are the different microhabitats that we use in this first study. Okay. Okay, as a summary, okay, enclosed depressions in the Karst surfaces provide a wide array of microclimatic habitats that have the capacity to support different taxa. So not only of ants, Because as I've mentioned, there are already a lot of studies about plants or vegetation, about vegetation of dolines, but this study proved that not only plants, but ants also can thrive in these doline microhabitats. Okay, so distribution of the different functional groups of ants and plants respond to the fine-scale microclimatic differences among the different microhabitats in a similar manner. Because as I've mentioned, we found or we recorded those full adapted species in for example, in the north and bottom aspects or part of the doline, which are also known to be cooler, and moisture. Okay, so those ant and plant assemblages respond to this fine-scale microclimatic differences, okay, in a similar manner. Okay, in this topographically complex environment, since it presents a diverse microclimate, may play a vital role, in terms of in situ survival of the different species, specifically during local and global climate fluctuations. Okay, so as well, lastly, so summary for this first study, predicting impacts of climate change on distribution of biodiversity should consider fine scale topographic variation as well. Okay. Okay, I hope everything is clear. So we are still in the first study. So there's 2 more studies for this talk. Okay, so let's proceed to the second study, which deals more about ants only. So in the first study, it deals more on ants and plants. We studied the different ant and plant assemblages. Just a recap, okay, para makasunod kayo dun sa mga sinasabi ko, because this is this is a very comprehensive work that I did in the last 4 years. So for the first study, we studied the different ant and plant assemblages among the 4 microhabitats of the dolines. What are those 4 microhabitats? We have the north-facing slope, south-facing slope, bottoms, and the plateau. So those are what we use to study the ant and plant assemblages. While for the second study, we only since we already proven that there are ants thriving in those dolines. This time we studied in detail what are the different specific functional groups and traits in these dolines. That's why this second study only focuses on ant assemblages. Okay, while dun sa first, that's one of the baseline studies proving that there are indeed unique ants in those dolines. Okay, for the second study about ants, in terms of species composition, we collected 22 ant species during this study. So we compared the different grassland dolines versus plateau, the ant species composition in terms of types of dolines, as well as we also compared the different doline types based on cover, as I've mentioned in my methodology. But as you can see here, there's no data in the type 4 doline or the forested doline because we didn't collect ants actually in those Fagus sylvatica forests. So studies showed that Fagus sylvatica forests or the low resource forests, those considered as not conducive for ant growth. That's why we didn't include them in the data analysis, because we didn't collect that much representative species of ants in those type 4 dolines, or those dolines surrounded mostly by forest. Okay, so these are just some of the species that we collected in our study. Okay, so these luscious platythorax and Myrmica were found to be in grassland dolines, and notably, these luscious platythorax and Myrmica are known to be full adapted species, unique species, okay, which have this kind of characteristics. While Myrmica scabrinodis are known to be warm adapted type of species, which mostly were found in this plateau or having these intermediate conditions. So plateau is like the control, okay, of our study, because we compare the different doline microhabitats as to the plateau. Okay. I hope everything is clear. Okay. For the different functional groups and traits, since I said for this study, we want to determine, no, what are the different functional groups and traits in terms of the different Doline habitat types. So for this study, we identified, no, unique functional groups and traits in Dolines, specifically those species adapted to cooler and warmer and moisture conditions. So we found ants having these unique attributes. No, we also found ants thriving in these Doline habitats, mostly those adapted to forest habitats. We also found ants, no, significantly high number of ants, mostly which are moderately or aggressive species, as well as those ants having these polygynous or monogynous species. When you say polygynous or monogynous species, those are ants with polygynous with multiple queen in one colony, while the monogynous species, we have this single queen, no, in a colony. Okay, so this shows, no, this illustrate or this figure shows what I have just said a while ago. No, that in these Dolines, we compared the different ant functional traits between the Dolines and plateau, and we found that in the Dolines, no, we recorded, no, ants having, okay, species adapted to different temperature and moisture, as you can see here. This is it means it's significantly higher, no, the number of these ants having this functional type. Okay, so that just shows that we collected ant species adapted to forest habitat. Okay, so there are high occurrences of ants found in Dolines, no, those adapted in forest habitat. Okay, so another one, we compare the different Doline types based on cover. So we compared what are the different functional groups, no, and traits of ants which can be found or commonly occurring, no, in these Doline types. Okay, are those types having more forest cover? Do they have more unique functional groups and traits? So we will discuss in this result. Okay, we found out that functional groups and traits did not differ that much significantly among the different Doline types. It means that cover, no, doesn't affected that much of the functional composition of ants. Okay. However, notably, we found that in the different Doline types, for example, in Doline type 3, no, as you can remember, these are Dolines which are mostly covered by forests. Okay, we found species adapted to intermediate, okay, moisture conditions. While for Doline types also covered with some covered with forests, like Doline types 2 and 3, we found aggressive ant species. While as well as for Doline types 2 and 3, we found those species mostly of those having monogynous characteristics or having those colony, no, having one queen. Okay, so those are the unique functional groups and traits we found when we compared the different Dolines having different cover or forest cover. Okay, so as a summary, no, of this study, so Dolines harbor specific functional groups and traits of ants that are rare in the surrounding habitats. Okay, and the high environmental heterogeneity in the Dolines influence the distribution of these functional groups and traits. Okay. Thirdly, the vegetation structure surrounding that plateau, specifically the Fagus sylvatica forest, highly influence as well the different functional groups and traits of the different ant assemblages. And lastly, ants indeed are reliable model and good indicators of species for identifying those locations that have the capacity to provide safe havens for different functional groups of species. So this study just proved, no, that Dolines indeed, no, harbor unique not only plant and taxa, but also unique different functional groups and traits specifically of ants. Okay. Now we proceed to the third study of this PhD work. Okay. Now I studied the effect of different disturbances, human induced disturbances, specifically on Doline vegetation. Okay. How these disturbances affect the naturalness of this vegetation. To make it simpler, no, does these disturbances affect the species composition in terms of, are there many invasive species? Okay, it have a higher invasive species indicate lower naturalness, for example. Okay, low number of invasive species, of course, indicate higher naturalness. Okay, so for this study, we collected our data both in Bükk Mountains and Mecsek Mountains. So we have this natural Doline and disturbed Doline. Disturbance was based in Bükk Mountains depending on cultivation. So it was previously cultivated, as well as there was lime burning in those areas. While in Mecsek Mountains, there were mostly caused by forestry management. So forest thinning in these Mecsek Mountains. Because these Mecsek Mountains, if you still remember, the habitats are mostly comprised of forest. Now, while here in Bükk Mountains, these are mostly grasslands. Habitats are dominated by grasslands. Okay, so we found 43 species, unique species in diagnostic species in Bükk Mountains, while we found 13 diagnostic species in Mecsek Mountains. The notable species found in this natural and disturbed dolines were Iris severica, which is a unique, full adapted plant species, while this Calamagrostis epigeus is a invasive, species. As you can see here, this is the Calamagrostis epigeus. So most disturbed dolines were dominated, by this Calamagrostis epigeus. Okay. While here, the natural doline were mostly dominated by these unique plant species. Okay. So in terms of differences in species composition, so the composition differed significantly in natural and disturbed dolines, both in Bükk and in Mecsek Mountains, as you can see here. In Bükk Mountains, you can see here that there is this difference in terms of species composition in natural and disturbed dolines. While here in Mecsek, the difference is not so distinct, but still, there's differences in terms of species composition in disturbed and natural doline types. Okay. So in terms of functional groups, what are the different functional groups we found in these Bükk Mountains and Mecsek Mountains? Let us have a recap. So I only studied the vegetation. So we will be talking more about the vegetation. So we grouped the different plants based on Borhidi, or social behavior types in Hungary. So we adapted our grouping of the different functional groups based on Borhidi's categorization or grouping. So we grouped the plants that we collected, we recorded based if it's a specialist species, if it's a competitor species, if it's a generalist species, and so on. So in Bükk Mountains, we collected, there is this high occurrences of specialist, generalist species in the natural habitats or natural dolines, in both sites. Okay, so here, as I've mentioned, there are high number of specialists, competitor, and general species in natural than disturbed dolines, while in the disturbance tolerant species were found mostly in disturbed habitats, of course. Okay. So, however, in Mecsek Mountains, so there are more, all functional groups were found to be higher in natural than in disturbed habitats. Okay, as a summary, so what is the essence of this study is that we found that local anthropogenic disturbances such as invasion of this dominant grassland competitor species, the Calamagrostis epigeus, and of course, because of extensive forestry activities, negatively affected the capacity of the dolines to support valuable species. So it kind of affected the dolines to become suitable habitat for valuable species such as it can be either montane species, relic species, or endemic species. Okay. So dolines more with natural vegetation or less disturbed habitats, of course, continuously increase the degree of naturalness in dolines by providing suitable habitats for a high diversity of valuable species. And lastly, in order to preserve the naturalness of this vegetation in grassland and forested dolines, population of this invasive species should be suppressed by controlled grazing and by retaining forest cover surrounding these doline habitats. Okay, so this is the summary of that study. Okay, so to have a recap of all the 3 studies that I have mentioned, what are the new scientific findings occurred during this study, or what are the salient findings we had for this PhD work. Okay. So this study demonstrated that these karst depressions provide a wide range of microclimatic habitats that have the capacity to support not only plants but also ants under various climatic trends. Okay. Secondly, so we also indicated that ants are reliable model organisms and good biological indicators, which can provide safe havens for different functional groups of species. We also highlighted and summarized the unique similarities between the strategies of plants and ants. Also, we revealed the co-occurrence of ants and plants characterized by their remarkably different environmental requirements in the dolines, and evaluated the importance of this pattern in the face of climate change. Okay. We also provided further evidence to hypothesis that heterogeneous karst landscape maintain functionally diverse animal assemblages and play an important part in the buffering the negative effects of global warming. That's why they are considered as local biodiversity hotspots. Okay, well, during extreme temperatures, these dolines can go to this bottom of depressions, for example, and these bottom depressions will serve as as climatic refugia to this species, especially during those extreme or global warming. Okay. And also we demonstrated that proportion of this forest, specifically the European beech forest, surrounding this, not only the dolines, but the plateau, also affects the different functional diversity of ant assemblages. And as well as, of course, human-mediated disturbances negatively affected the degree of naturalness, not only in grassland, but also in forested habitats in these dolines. Okay, I think that's it. If you want to read further about what I have discussed, all were already published in these 3 important studies, which is also part of that big research project that I have mentioned during my first few slides. Okay, so I want to acknowledge, of course, my supervisors, Dr. Sultan Battery and Dr. Gabo Lorenzi, for this patience and also for this mentorship in this very as you can say, very comprehensive study, highly ecological study about the conservation, or the study of on the role of habitat heterogeneity and disturbances on those plant and plant assemblages. Also, the Stipendum Hungaricum program for the scholarship that they have given me during my 4-year study in Hungary. Of course, the CHED for endorsing me to this scholarship, as well as the different embassies who aided us during our study, our stay, the visa application process, and of course to my home institution, the Department of Forest Biological Sciences, as well as of course UPLB for granting me study leave with pay to pursue my PhD in Hungary. This was taken during my PhD defense last autumn. So, kasanam saipen, maraming salamat po and thank you very much for listening to my talk. I hope you learned, no? From this, even me, I don't know how to explain it that much in layman's terms because this is highly, uh, uh, ecological study, about karst dolines, and also studying the dolines for me is also challenging because I haven't experienced it, of course, in the Philippines because we have different types of karst ecosystem. No, so studying as well this ecosystem broaden my knowledge and hope I can use this knowledge, to do similar studies in karst in the Philippines, of course, and more of the conservation not only of the species which can be found in this karst landscape, but as well as their habitats. No, that's actually one of the major problems that we're encountering right now. No, most of the habitats now are destroyed, because of a lot of human-induced disturbances. Okay, so maraming salamat po. So I apologize for the glitches. So I'm a bit medyo kinabahan ako sa umpisa, but I hope naintindihan niyo yung talk ko. Bawi na lang kayo sa mga tanong. So maraming salamat. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Dianne. Maraming salamat po. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. We have so far 76 participants here in our webinar. So please, again, if you are interested or if you would like to ask Ma'am Dianne some questions, just go to the chat box, put your questions there. And if you are on the YouTube, I'll be waiting for your inputs in the comment section. All right. So congratulations, ma'am, for your presentation and of course for your dissertation and graduating from University of Sesqued. My first question is I've just listed some of you few questions, very general lang po to start the Q&A. Ma'am, how big should a doline be in order to support unique biodiversity and what you call as heterogeneous habitats? Because do sa presentation nyo parang I think I did not get the idea how massive the dolines are. So is it possible na may malilit lang tayo dolines but they can harbor or they could support a very unique set of biodiversity?
Yes, thanks for that question, Sir Flor. Hindi ko nga pala nabanggit kasi I want to discuss a lot of information and siguro na ano lang ako nadala. But yeah, so for those 3 studies, I can say we use different sizes and depth of doline. So I can say from 65 meters to as wide as 160 meters. Yun yung mga ginamit naming dolines. Can you imagine? So malalaki talaga siyang solution dolines. No, yung depth naman niya range from actually 10 to 15 meters yung depth ng mga dolines na ginamit namin.
Okay.
So
malalim din, parang swimming pool. No?
Malalaki talaga sila.
All right, sige. Okay, before I proceed to my second question, we have Alexis Fajardo. He's from MCME, no? CFNR. Kudos, Ma'am Dianne. Mentor and a friend. My question po daw niya, what are the challenges which you have encountered during the conduct of your study?
Oh, a lot. Because I'm a trained entomologist and I'm familiar more of the tropical, flora and fauna. Because when I went to Hungary, talagang start from zero, no? Because although pinili ko naman yung topic na yun because I'm a trained as agriculture entomologist. So before I used to study more on the economic aspect of insect, but when I started teaching in the forestry, the College of Forestry on forest entomology, I become to be more into the role, importance of these insects. No? So, when it comes to, when I come to Hungary, alam ko na agad yung mga makakaharap ko na mga problema. So, isa nga to sa mga challenges na sinasabi ko base doon sa tanong mo is that, una, I need to get familiarized with their ecosystem. With their mountains, with their forests, kasi I'm used to tropical rainforest. And then they have this different types of forest totally. Like they have this European beech forest, they have this oak forest. So for me, these are like, wow, totally different. No? Tapos in terms of species also of ants, sasabihin nila sa akin, mas madami kayo sa Pilipinas, of course. like them, they have like only 200 species of ants. So identification, of course, is not that easy, but they guided me in a way that I was able to easily also help in the identification of the species. So I think the challenges might be more on not only on technical side, but also on the adaptation as well, on the cultural side, because I need to learn their values and also the language. Oh, Hungarian language is very difficult to learn. So part yan, to be able to get embedded also with the group, with the research group, you need to know, no, at least some basic language, which I was able to learn also maybe in the last second or third year of my stay in Hungary. So that was really an interesting question from you, Alexis. Thank you. So I adjusted, and for me, the biggest challenge are the cultural differences, of course, the differences in terms of the ecosystem as well as the species, of course. Yes.
Yan. Okay. Thanks, Alexis. Baka interested kang pumunta sa Hungary, no? Sa
Yeah, you can ask
MNH.
me about Stipendium Hungaricum, those who are interested
Okay.
to apply.
So
in
yeah,
that
kung yung
scholarship.
mga interested na, mag-apply sa university na pinag-aralan ni Ma'am.
University of Seged, oh, is really good in that aspect, in those
Yeah.
ecology, those biology and medical, and also medical sciences actually.
Try nyo lang kontakin si Ma'am. I guess Ma'am, if it's okay with you, pwede nyo ilagay yung email address nyo sa chat box, so for
Okay,
everyone
sure.
to,
Yes.
kung meron interested na i-contact kayo, no?
Yeah, I would be really happy to assist. Lalo sa if you want to apply for stipendium, maybe I can give some important, advice on
Yeah.
how to easily get accepted, and also, yes, of course, on your application, lalo din sa PhD. So I'm willing to share my experience as well.
All right, thank you. So, if you meron pa ba tayong mga questions dito sa ating chat box? I'll check my YouTube comment section. So far, wala po tayo sa YouTube. Okay, so ayun po yung email address ni Ma'am Dianne. It's dd.aguilon@up.edu.ph. So while you're probably still thinking of other questions, I have one. Ma'am, do you think there's a correlation between the type of doline formation? Kasi sabi niyo po ay solution doline yung nandyan, no? How about for example, the type of doline formation, whether it's solution doline or collapsed doline, does it have a correlation on the diversity of the fauna? Would it have correlation to the diversity of fauna and flora in the said microhabitat?
What I can say specifically, to be honest, no, because I didn't study about the differences in terms of types of dolines and the biodiversity which can be found there. But I'm pretty sure that compared to other habitat types or other ecosystem, this karst landscape in general harbor unique biodiversity. That I can assure. Okay, that for instance, what we have, I just recently read about the sinkhole. We call it actually in the Philippines, sinkhole, that they surely have this unique species, not only of fauna but also flora species in those sinkholes. Those are like kind of very interesting ecosystem to do studies.
Okay. So we have a question from Ma'am Cristina Barazona, and she's from MSU IIT. And the question is, does myrmecophily has a significant contribution to preserving the doline as a microrefugia for the doline flora? What? Paki-clarify na lang po ang myrmecophily.
When you say myrmecophily, I think it is the relationship between Lysinidae, I think the blues butterfly, and also these are like mutual relationship between butterflies and ants. So your question is, does this phenomenon or this relationship significant contribution to the preservation? I think not the relationship itself, but the capacity of these dolines, having this unique microclimate inside them. Also, this habitat that these dolines will have significant effect on these relationships, okay, that you mentioned. Not actually the myrmecophily itself will affect significant contribution, but I think it's more of how dolines will will protect or serve as this climatic refugia, for examples on this unique relationship. I hope I answered it properly. No? By the way, hindi ko pala nabanggit, may mga ilang species doon. Hindi ko lang sure yung species, but I know some Myrmica species are considered as Myrmecophilous. I don't know if I'm saying it the right term. No, they have also recorded no relationship with butterflies. But as I've said, no, our study is the first study that actually showed that there are indeed these dolines harbored unique not only ants but ant functional functional groups and traits. So kumbaga sa tanong na yan, hindi pa ganun ka-explored kasi nga nag-uumpisa pa lang na pinag-aaralan when it comes to ants sa mga doline habitats na to. Okay.
All right. Okay.
Yes.
So from Aldrich Joshua Reyes is actually a comment. He's asking for your contact information. So it's dd.aguilon@up.edu.ph. Nakalagay na po dyan sa chat box. Okay. All right. So again, if you have questions, please put it here in the chat box. Ma'am, ako po, have you observed if kung meron pong ants na they were like codependents or they have symbiotic relationships with identified plants in the Doline areas? Meron na ba kayong nakitang ganon?
Base dun sa study namin, it's independent kasi siya. So hindi related at all yung ants sa plants. Just that we study them based on their response to the abiotic parameters that we measured. So this is not the scope of our study, but dinanong ko yung professor ko, which is a myrmecologist. So even he haven't it is not known yet, to be honest, kung may mga ants ba na may possible relationship sa plants. Maybe this will be the next step for them. Okay.
So yon, interesting lang po kasi, no?
Very nice. Yeah, very nice question. But yeah, as I'm not expert of Karst dolines, but I'm really, as I've said, thankful that I was given an opportunity to work with those really brilliant scientists in Hungary to work on this unique ecosystem, this Karst landscape, and also broaden actually my knowledge, and in a way motivated me later on hopefully to conduct this Karst research in the Philippines naman. Yes, focusing on insects, of course.
May curious lang ako, ma'am. Parang it's a question of a chicken and an egg, no? During the development of the Karst doline, no? Ano po kayo mauuna? Yung mag-adapt yung halaman o mag-adapt yung arthropod assemblages natin? And would it have an impact? Would it have an impact dun sa others? Like naunang nag-develop yung plants dun sa doline, then will it be a factor in determining kung ano yung mga arthropods, or particularly in this case sa study mo, kung ano yung mga ants na pwedeng mag-start to inhabit there?
Well, I think that question can be sometimes depends if you're asking a plant taxonomist or an entomologist. Of course, as an entomologist, I will say insects firstly is the co-adaptation that we call, no? Insects might be probably the first one to adapt it, no, to this kind of symbiotic relationship. But to be honest, I'm not expert in this field, so I cannot give maybe reliable information about this, but that can be a good also area of research, no, to study. Okay, and sabi ko nga, bago-bago pa lang pinag-aaralan kung ano nga yung nakikita sa dolines. So hindi pa sila dumadating sa ganang aspect na pagdating sa co-evolution. So it can be also a very interesting
topic to study.
I didn't answer it, I think, but
no. I think I get the picture, ma'am. Na curious lang ako kasi if you're looking forward do sa pwedeng maging kumbaga side studies na pwedeng gawin, I think mga magagandang research questions po kasi yun,
nice to look that unique relationship, no. Now, once you identified a certain plant and ant species that they have the symbiotic relationship, like hindi ko matandaan yung term, pero may mga plants kasi talaga na nag-harbor sila ng ng ants. So I think we have in Mount Makiling, no? So I'm not familiar with the species, but I know this plant in Mount Makiling wherein it kind of harbors or it serves as a nest, no? Sa mga ants.
Ant plant yata yun, if I'm not
mistaken.
mistaken.
Yun nga yung tawag, sir. Yan, may
Actually,
familiar pa sa akin, yes.
I've seen one sa I think sa Siargao, as in talaga nandun sila sa loob nung tree.
That's a good co-adaptation, sir. That's what you're talking about. No, would be great to study those. But I think there are not so many studies on those kasi ang sir, they are rare. Hirap silang hanapin. Yun kasi yung nagiging problema. But once you know where to find them, then it will be easy to pursue those kinds of highly interesting studies that you mentioned.
All right. Okay, curious din ako. Ma'am, ano po gaano po katagal yung development ng isang doline environment? I think hindi nyo yata na-touch yun sa inyong presentation. Would it be like a doline would be...
Geomorphology? Oh, that's also a very question because yeah, you're right. I didn't consider that because we directly studied not the biological aspect actually of doline. So since the geodiversity has been well known, so there's also a lot of studies about this geodiversity of doline. So that's a good point. Actually, maybe I read it, but I'm not sure, no? Kung gaano katagal ba talaga yung formation, but maybe it take a lot of years, maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a very good question.
Lang po kasi parang meron lang kasi akong sa course kasi ng work, no? Meron na po kami mga napuntahan na may mga dito sa atin sa Pilipinas, meron tayong mga sinkholes, no? And usually dahil it's an eventual collapse lang ng surface ground dun papunta doon sa cavern ng mga caves. And from what I am able to observe, usually kung ano yung mga flora na nasa taas, no, na original, ay share rin din yung makikita sa baba, no. Until na dahil medyo nando sila sa part na kulang ang light, so eventually some of them die out. But there are some mga flora na kumbaga nabubuhay pa rin siya, no. I don't know, siguro baka meron pong mga expert na nasa members ng ating audience na siguro dito sa case natin yung mga ating sinkholes, possibly may mas mabibilis na nagde-develop here dito sa Pilipinas dahil sa ating style ng development ng sinkholes.
We have more rainfall
bumabagsak kasi, no, bumabagsak
yun yung mga sinasabi mo, yung mga isang type ng doline, collapse dolines, no?
Yes po.
Siya ng cave tapos bumagsak yung surface. Kaya nagkaroon ng sinkhole. Iba naman yung types. Mostly ganun yung mayroon tayo sa Pilipinas.
Yung solution dolines, nakakita na po ko noon actually sa loob ng mga caves, no. Kasi yung groundwater na nagsisip dun sa limestone, siya unti-unti talaga siya makikita mo naglalakad ka, and then sasabihin ng guide sa inyo na wag ka tumapak daw kasi baka lumusot ka, hindi mo alam kung saan kaabutin. So na-imagine ko po yung solution, no, solution doline, pero from what I have seen and observed, maliliit lang po siya, and usually nasa loob din siya ng mga kuweba. Hindi tulad diyan na outside, nasa taas siya ng landscape, which is I think kaya siya, no.
Grassland and forested dolines as they call them, kasi part talaga siyang landscape. Nakaano yung mga depressions. Ang daming nakatuwa talaga ako kasi when we go to the fields, like may mga parang depressions na nakikita ko sa field, no? Hindi lang siya normal na grassland, but there's like depressions, and they say, oh, that's a unique ecosystem right there, sabi nila. So maybe you have more experience than me in the Philippines, because I only experienced actually this Karst landscape. Of course, I've been to a lot of places, but hindi naman talaga pinag-aralan. Napupuntahan ko lang yung mga Karst forest, diba, na sinasabi natin. Pero these depressions, it come kind of like only give me a lot information when I went to Hungary to study there and to have my PhD work. So sabi ko nga, so it kind of give me an idea na, ganun pala. Ito pala yung mga important Karst landscapes. And would be nice, sabi din ng supervisor ko nga to apply what I have learned from Hungary here in the Philippines.
Yeah. Malay natin meron ding mga parang ano ba, similar environments dito sa ating Karst landscapes. We don't know, no? Considering na there are a lot of areas pa rin na kailangan nating i-explore at kailangan nating mapuntahan. Alright. So, kung wala na pong, I guess wala na pong magtatanong, no? Here sa ating Q&A, and I've checked our YouTube. Wala naman pong, there are no questions here. So, thank you very much, Ma'am Dianne. Congratulations once again. And we are honored to give this certificate of appreciation to our speaker, Ma'am Dianne Joy D. Aguilon, and the certificate reads as Certificate of Appreciation is awarded to Ma'am Dianne Joy D. Aguilon for serving as resource person during the UPLB Museum of Natural History's Biodiversity Seminar on Ant and Plant Assemblages in Karst, Doline, the role of habitat heterogeneity and anthropogenic disturbance held today, May 11, 2022, from 3 to 4:30 p.m. via Zoom. And it's signed by Director Dr. Marian P. Delia. Congratulations, ma'am. Before we end, we're inviting you to visit our website. It's at mnh.uplb@up.edu.ph. If you have questions, you can write us at mnh.uplb@up.edu.ph. And please like, follow, subscribe on our social media accounts. It's at Facebook. We have Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. Just look for the handle UPLB Museum. And we are also in TripAdvisor and Wikipedia. So with that, maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat, Ma'am Dayan. Congratulations once again.